Good afternoon viewers and welcome to the EduSat live lecture for the science stream. We are continuing our series on molecular biology and we have with us Dr. Charu Dogra Rawat from Ramjas College. She has been teaching us all the concepts and theories in molecular biology and she has been explaining us about DNA. So till DNA we have understood its structure, its conformation. So how does it transfers that information that it is carrying to all the proteins that will eventually carry out the task? And that critical process and that critical molecule is going to be RNA. And so today we will start with transcription. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Charu Dogra Rawat to our studio. Welcome Dr. Rawat.
Thank you, Niti. So today we'll be doing the DNA to RNA, the process, the mechanism of transcription, particularly in prokaryotes, which we'll talk about. But we have been studying the structure of DNA. The primary function of DNA, when we talk about, is it carries the information which has to be passed on to the next generation. The information which is used by the cell is in the form of the proteins, which are the effector molecules. So DNA has to basically code for the information which give rise to the different kind of proteins in the cell, which performs different functions of the cell. So now this DNA to protein thing, we also talked about the central dogma, comes that there is an intermediate which is called as the RNA. So the DNA information, the DNA which is present in the nucleus and proteins which are synthesized in the cytoplasm, the intermediate which carries this information from DNA to proteins is the RNA molecule. So today we'll talk about how does this happen, how the DNA decodes its information into the RNA or passes the information. The decoding occurs at the protein level, but how this information is first passed on to RNA, which then goes out in the cytoplasm and then decodes to form different kinds of proteins. So we'll start with DNA to RNA, this transcription process, and the learning objectives for today's lecture would be to understand the structure of bacterial RNA polymerase. So we, as I said, that we'll be covering the prokaryotic transcription today. So we'll understand the enzymes which are important for this transformation from DNA to RNA, the process of transcription, the bacterial RNA polymerase. We'll understand the function of the different components or different subunits of the bacterial RNA polymerase. Then as we go through in the lecture, we'll understand the mechanism of transcription initiation in bacteria. We'll see that this transcription, this transformation from DNA to RNA is basically carried out in 3 steps. The first one is the initiation, when the mechanism, the process starts. Then comes the elongation, then how this DNA is transcribed into RNA, and then there is a termination which occurs. So this initiation, elongation and termination cycle we will follow. We'll understand the mechanism of transcription initiation, we'll understand the mechanism of elongation, and we'll understand the mechanisms of transcription termination in bacteria. So, practically we'll cover the prokaryotic transcription in today's lecture. So now just to review, what is transcription? Transcription is the synthesis of RNA using DNA as a template. So DNA is the genetic material of the cell. It is a double-stranded molecule. Now we have to synthesize this RNA. The cell synthesizes the RNA, which is a single-stranded molecule, from this DNA using this DNA as a template. So the synthesis of the RNA, this is the first level of gene expression. So as I said, the parts of DNA, the DNA is ultimately going to form the proteins. So this is the first level of gene expression when the information from the DNA is passed on to the RNA, which will direct the formation of particular proteins. So gene is expressed, when we say that a particular part of a segment of DNA is expressed, that means that it is giving rise to a functional protein. So that part or that segment of DNA which is giving rise to a functional protein, it is termed as a gene. So the first level of this gene expression is the formation of RNA from the DNA molecule, which will then act as an intermediate for the protein synthesis. So transcription is the first level of gene expression, and it is the predominant level of gene regulation. In our subsequent lectures, we will touch upon the gene regulation. Every cell does not produce all the, does not express all the genes all the time. They do not produce or they do not form amino acids or proteins basically from all the genes which are present inside the cell. The formation of the proteins is regulated. That means that the part of the genes, the part of the DNA segments or the genes are expressed, can be expressed at different times, or in fact between different cells different proteins can be expressed. So how does these different proteins are formed? That the gene expression is regulated, and the predominant level of this gene expression regulation is at the level of transcription. That is when the DNA goes to form the RNA. Then the RNA formed will go and form the proteins, and then some kind of regulation occurs at the formation at the level of when the RNA gets translated into a protein, or after when the protein is formed also. But the predominant level of gene expression is at the time of gene regulation, which is quite obvious because then the resources are not wasted. When the DNA has to code for RNA, and if it is regulated whether it does have to form the RNA and the protein or not, so whenever it is needed, then only it forms, then the resources are saved. If they keep on forming all the proteins and then the proteins which are to be used are going to sustain and which are not going to be used are discarded, then all the resources for the formation of proteins have been wasted. So the predominant level of gene regulation is at the transcription level. And chemically and enzymatically, as we follow through the mechanism of transcription, we will see that chemically and enzymatically it is very similar to DNA replication. So you have already studied about DNA replication, which is the formation of DNA strands from the DNA itself so that they can be distributed to the daughter generation. So we know that the primary function of DNA is to pass this information to the next generation also, and that is how it does that. The DNA forms a copy of itself, and then the copies are distributed amongst the daughter nuclei, and therefore it is passed on to the next generation, and this mechanism is the DNA replication mechanism. So we will look at the factors that how the transcription. So ideally in transcription process also DNA is giving rise to another strand, and if you go back to the structure of RNA molecule, it was essentially the same as DNA except for the fact that the base thymine was replaced by uracil. It is a polynucleotide chain. It is single stranded, but it is a polynucleotide chain formed by these nitrogenous bases A, G, C, but instead of T which is present in the DNA, U is present in the RNA. So essentially both the molecules, they are the polynucleotide chains which are there. So the synthesis of DNA from DNA and synthesis of RNA from DNA is chemically and enzymatically a similar process. The only thing would be the replacement of thymine with the uracil. So we will look at that they involve the synthesis of a new strand of nucleic acid which is complementary to a DNA template strand. So one thing which we talked about when we studied the structure of DNA, that how come the two helices join together, or how this information is passed on to the next generation. The essence of it was that there is a complementary base pairing, that A always pairs with T and G always pairs with C, and that's how the information which is stored in one of the strand of the DNA can be copied into the newer strand and passed on to the next generation. So the complementarity of the base pairing is an important phenomena, and that is what happens in the case of DNA replication, and as we will see, it also happens in the case of DNA transcription. But there are certain differences between transcription and replication, and just to go through them, the first thing is that the transcription is asymmetric. That is, only one strand of DNA is used as a template. Now, if you again review the process of DNA replication, then both the strands were getting copied into newer strands. If you remember that one strand was continuously formed and the other strand was formed in smaller bits and then joined together by different enzymes such as ligases. If you remember, that was called as the leading and the lagging strand. But at the end, both the strands were duplicated, giving rise to two molecules of double helical DNA structure. So one molecule of double helix was giving rise to two molecules of double helix. each strand was copied to form a newer strand. But that doesn't happen in transcription. In transcription, only one of the strand give rise to the RNA, basically. Not both the strands give rise to it, and that strand is called as the template strand. So the transcription is asymmetric. Then in transcription, for obviously the new strand is made from ribonucleotides rather than deoxyribonucleotides. So again, DNA has deoxyribonucleotides. It has a 2' H instead of the 2' OH in the sugar moiety, whereas in RNA it was a 2' OH at the sugar moiety, and therefore it is a ribonucleotide. So it incorporates ribonucleotides instead of the deoxyribonucleotides. Then the enzyme that catalyzes this RNA synthesis, which is called as RNA polymerase, and if you remember, then the enzyme that catalyzes DNA synthesis was called as DNA polymerase. The RNA polymerase can initiate the transcription de novo, which means that it does not need a primer. Now that is a very important difference between the RNA polymerase and DNA polymerase, because essentially what they are doing is they are incorporating the nucleotides which are coming, whether they are ribonucleotides or deoxyribonucleotides, at the 3' OH end of the one of the strands, and that chain is then growing. That is what both the molecules, both the enzymes are doing. But the RNA polymerase can start de novo, which means that it does not need a primer bound to the DNA template strand. It can right away start from, obviously there are certain sequences which we will see from where it can start. But if you remember that DNA needed RNA primers, it needed RNA primers to be bound to the unbound DNA double helical structure, and then only the DNA polymerase can synthesize or add on the newer nucleotides for the newer growing chain which was there. So the RNA polymerase can initiate transcription de novo. Then another difference between replication and transcription is that RNA product does not remain base paired to the template DNA strand. The enzyme displaces the growing chain only a few nucleotides behind where each ribonucleotide is added. So, you know, it's a transient structure. The DNA-RNA hybrid which is formed is a transient structure. The RNA product does not remain base paired with the DNA template strand from which it is formed. But if you remember that in DNA, the double helical structure is unbound, then the RNA primers attach and the new strands are synthesized. So the two daughter molecules will have one parent strand and one daughter strand, and then they are distributed into the two cells, which is happening, obviously the replication is happening at the time of cell division. But in transcription, what is happening is, as the newer strand is formed, obviously because it is complementarity base pairing, therefore it is attached to the DNA template strand from which it is formed, but that is only for a very short time. As soon as the RNA is formed, you know, the chain grows, then the RNA dissociates from the DNA template strand. So at a particular time, only a very small segment of DNA-RNA hybrid structure you can find. Only a small segment of RNA, the nascent transcript which is formed, is attached to the DNA template strand. So that forms another difference between transcription and replication. Another difference is that the transcription is less accurate than replication. There is one mistake occurs in every 10,000 nucleotides which are added. However, replication is a very, there is a very limited scope of error in there, or the errors are very limited in there. There is one mistake that occurs in around 100,000 nucleotides which are added, and that is quite obvious. Because replication, the genome is replicating, making copies of itself and then passed on to the two daughter nuclei. So the genetic information has to be very precise and very correct, because it is passing to the next generation. Obviously, there is a scope of some variations, but still it has to be, the scope of error should be very, very limited. But at transcription, it's a little less accurate, because this error is, it's okay to have a little bit of error at the point of transcription, because that is the decoding of the information which will take place. So even if a little error is there, we will see when you will study about the translation, then when the amino acids are coded from the RNA, then probably it just reads the first two nucleotides. And it has that leverage that whatever nucleotide is present at the third position, it might just, code for one amino acid or the other amino acid. So it can take a little bit of error. It can accommodate the error more in transcriptional process than in replication, which has to be very, very accurate, because it has to be passed to the next generation. Then another difference is that the transcription selectively copies only certain parts of the genome and makes anywhere from 1 to several hundred or even 1,000 copies of any given section. However, replication must copy the entire genome and do so only once at the time of cell division. This is essentially the difference between the function, the differences in the function which the DNA plays. One role of DNA is to pass the genetic information that it contains to the next generation, and for that the process of replication occurs, and therefore the DNA has to be duplicated once and only once every cell division occurs, because otherwise the genome, the number of the set of chromosomes or the number of or the amount of genome which is present in the daughter nuclei will change. So the genome of one, the DNA of one parent will just duplicate and then passed on to the next two daughter nuclei. However, what happens in the transcription, the function the DNA plays for transcription is that it is going to decode its information. Therefore, it needs more of RNA and therefore more of protein can be formed. And the entire DNA does not contain only one information. It has different parts which contain different information which is encoded in it, and therefore every part can be transcribed into RNA at different times and in different number of copies. So it can be transcribed one if a lesser amount of protein is needed, or it can be transcribed into multiple number of copies if a higher amount of protein is needed. And therefore the transcription, the copying of the DNA occurs section wise or the segment wise, that only a part of DNA which we know as the gene, then the part of DNA is only transcribed into RNA or copied into as RNA, and not the entire DNA happens at the same time. So these are some of the differences between transcription and replication, which is very important to understand, because mechanistically and chemically, as I said, both the processes are same, and ideally they are doing the same thing. They are copying the DNA strand into the other thing. Now each RNA molecule is called as a transcript, and the region of DNA from which it is transcribed is a transcription unit. So transcription unit is actually a synonym for what we call it as a gene or a cistron, or sometimes as an operon if there are multiple number of genes which are present. But transcription unit is basically it's a more appropriate term as far as when we talk about the transcription process, but commonly we can call it as a gene. So the region of DNA from which this RNA is transcribed is called as a transcription unit. Now certain nomenclature for this DNA strands is again very important to understand in transcription unit before we move forward to the mechanism, which is that on the top panel we show the double stranded DNA, the 5' to 3' and 3' anti-parallel polynucleotide chains, and when the transcription is happening, then it is happening only on one of the strands, as it is shown in the black strand. So the black strand is actually called as the template strand. So the one whose complementary, who's transcribing for the RNA is called as the template strand, and the white strand which is not forming the RNA is called as the non-template strand. Now in terms of, you must have heard of the terminology such as the sense strand sometimes, or it is the coding strand. Then the strand, because RNA is complementary to the DNA template strand, and RNA is what codes for the amino acid. So the sequence which RNA carries in the DNA is called as the coding strand. So basically the complementary to the template strand or the non-template strand will be called as the coding strand. So you should understand this fact, I repeat again, that there is a template strand from which the RNA is formed. The RNA is complementary to the template strand because the base pairing is occurring, and that is why the RNA is synthesized. Now the sequence of RNA is going to go and translate into a protein. The sequence of RNA is complementary to the template strand, or in otherwise if we just look at the DNA, it basically the complementary strand of the DNA is equal to the sequence of RNA except for the fact that T would be replaced by A. So the RNA sequence is said to be the coding thing which is coding for the amino acid, and if we look at the DNA, the non-template strand has the same sequence as the RNA strand. Therefore, the non-template strand is said to be the coding strand, or it makes sense because it is giving rise to a functional protein, so it's a sense strand. Whereas the template strand will be called as the antisense strand or the anti-coding strand. So you should understand this terminology so as to understand that how the mechanism is going on. Now, another important fact is that as we say that because the two strands are there and only part of the DNA is transcribed and only one strand transcribes, but it is not necessarily that the entire DNA, one strand is the template strand. The template strand can switch, sometimes one of the strands can act as a template and the other time the other strand can act as a template for the synthesis of RNA, because it is occurring in parts. It is not the entire strand which is giving rise to a copy. So, at one time, one segment of the DNA can act from one of the strands as a gene and therefore get transcribed into RNA, and the other time the other part of the gene, another segment from the other strand can act as a gene. So, the sense of the genomic DNA strand can often switch because of the adjacent genes differ in their orientation. That if you have got, so for example, the white and the black as it is shown here, then sometimes then the black portion can give rise to an RNA and sometimes a part of the white portion can give rise to an RNA. So, it depends upon where the gene is located, whether it is located on the segment of DNA which is black in color or the segment of DNA which is white in color. So, the parts can be differ and therefore, the sense of the DNA strand can switch because of the adjacent genes differ in their orientation. So, now we come to the mechanism of transcription. So, what are overview, like what are the stages of transcription which are there? So, if you look at that, the first thing is that there is a double-stranded thing, and that double-stranded DNA molecule has a segment which is called as the transcription unit. So, this segment of DNA needs to be transcribed into RNA. Now, we will look at that this transcription unit will have some characteristic structural features based upon the sequences, also certain structural features. One is called as the promoter, from where the transcription will start, and another is a terminator where the transcription will stop. So, the enzyme RNA polymerase, the first stage in transcription would be that RNA polymerase will bind to this double-stranded DNA at the promoter. So, at the promoter, the RNA polymerase will bind. This will give rise to what is called as a closed complex, because the double-stranded DNA is still not unwound. It is still double-stranded. It is not open. So, the RNA polymerase will bind at the promoter and then it will cause the local DNA unwinding. So, when the local DNA is unwound in the area where the RNA polymerase is bound, then the initiation of RNA synthesis occurs. So, initiation will actually include two mechanisms. One is loading of the RNA polymerase onto the promoter, and second is causing the RNA promoter closed complex to convert into an open promoter complex. When the DNA is unwound and when the RNA synthesis initiates, then it is called as an open promoter complex. Then the NTPs, it will take up NTPs and it will start growing the chain of RNA, and that will include into the elongation of RNA, the next stage of transcription. So, it initiated and now it is elongating. The promoter, the RNA polymerase will leave the promoter, a process which is called as promoter clearance or promoter escape. It will leave the promoter and will move in the direction of 5' to 3' synthesis of RNA. So, it will move in that direction and the elongation of RNA will take place, and as you can see, the red RNA chain is going to be formed. Then further elongation occurs, so RNA polymerase will keep on moving across this transcription unit until it reaches a termination signal. So, it will reach a termination signal, it will get dissociated from the complex, and then the RNA is released, the nascent transcript is released. So, in the entire process, if you can see, then DNA-RNA hybrid is only formed at a transient time. Otherwise, the single strand RNA is released and finally it gets dissociated from the double-stranded DNA molecule. The molecule which was unwound then reforms the helix and the RNA nascent transcript is released. So, that is the stages of transcription, the initiation, the elongation and the termination. Now, we will get into the detail of these things. We will talk about the transcriptional initiation in prokaryotes, and to start with we will talk about the enzyme, the RNA polymerase, that what is the, whether it is a single subunit enzyme or what is the structural features of this RNA polymerase. A single RNA polymerase transcribes all genes. Why I say that? Because when we'll do the transcriptional initiation in eukaryotes, we will see that there are 3 different kind of RNA polymerases which are used by the eukaryotes for transcribing different genes. But in case of prokaryotes, particularly in bacteria, a single RNA polymerase transcribes all the genes. The E. coli polymerase core enzyme has these 5 subunits, which is 6 subunits, 2 alpha, 1 beta dash and 1 omega subunits. So the core enzyme has all these subunits which are present, and there is another subunit which is called as sigma unit, and that completes the holoenzyme. So there is a core enzyme which is formed of 2, 3, 4 and 5 subunits, and then there is a sigma which combines with this core enzyme to complete the holoenzyme. So as you can see, the core enzyme is basically required for the polymerization activity. Polymerization is addition of polynucleotide one after the other at the 3' side. So basically it is required for the elongation. In fact, the core enzyme is enough for the elongation. It does not need the sigma factor, and core enzyme can practically bind at any part of the DNA segment and start the transcription process. It does not need any specific place. So core enzyme has the capability to elongate the formation of a RNA, to keep on adding the nucleotides in the growing chain of RNA. But when it combines with the sigma factor and it becomes a holoenzyme, that gives the specificity to the enzyme to bind at the promoter regions only. So the tendency to bind for the RNA polymerase, that it can bind anywhere on the DNA and probably start the process of transcription, but sigma factor gives this specificity when it forms as a holoenzyme. So sigma factor has 2 functions. One, it recognizes the promoter. So promoter is a cis-acting element, we will talk about it. It is the element which is present on the DNA just adjacent to the gene which is to be transcribed. So it recognizes the promoter. And second important function of this sigma factor is that it converts the closed promoter complex into an open promoter complex. So we just saw that the RNA polymerase sits on a double-stranded DNA molecule only. But then this double-stranded DNA molecule, a local unbounding has to occur. So the closed promoter complex has to convert into an open promoter complex. And a number of abortive initiations occur. When the RNA polymerase sits on the promoter, it transcribes the smaller transcripts or smaller RNAs, 3 to 8 nucleotides in length, and then it will dissociate. And then again it will sit and will try to form. So, there is a couple of abortive initiations which occur, which explains that, why it is happening, because it is a de novo synthesis. It does not have a primer where there is already a segment which is there and all you have to do is keep on adding the nucleotides to grow the chain. It's not like that. It has to make out that where it has to start from. So the core enzyme, when it combines with the sigma factor, it identifies it has more specificity for the promoter region. So it loads the RNA polymers, particularly at the promoters of the genes, and then after the loading, it makes sure that it passes this threshold of 10 nucleotide RNA transcript. So for a proper transcription to occur, a transcript longer than 10 nucleotides in length has to be formed. Otherwise, there will be what I said as the abortive initiations. The RNA polymerase will form but dissociate, will form an 8 nucleotide, 10 nucleotide and then again dissociate. So after this initial abortive initiations, it will make a stable interaction with the DNA strand, and then the sigma factor will help the closed promoter complex to transform into open promoter complex, and then the RNA polymerase will clear the promoter and go on to the DNA strand, transcribing it through the entire transcription unit. So sigma factor plays a very, very important role. In fact, if sigma factor is not there, then the RNA polymerase cannot load very strongly or cannot load specifically at the promoter regions of the DNA strand. So it is required for the correct initiation or of transcription, binding to the promoter, as well as the converting the closed promoter complex into the open promoter complex. Now, what are these bacterial promoters which we are talking about? So, RNA polymerase recognizes and binds to a cis-acting element, the promoter. Cis-acting element basically means that it is present on the same side of the DNA where the gene is there. So, if it is an adjacent and cis-acting element means it's a sequence thing. some sequence which is present upstream or downstream or wherever, or in between also in eukaryotic system. It is present near to the gene which is to be transcribed, and but it is present on the same strand as the gene is there. So, it is a cis-acting element. RNA polymerase recognizes this cis-acting element's promoter and binds to it to cause the transcription of the gene. Promoter, as I said, is located close to the transcriptional start site of the gene. So, transcriptional start site is from where the transcription will begin, and it is basically composed of two separate areas. So, there are different kind of promoters. As you can see in this, there is a -10 region and -35. This terminology, why these values are there, is basically the transcription start site from where the DNA, the first nucleotide which gets transcribed into RNA, we label it as +1, and on the left hand side or the upstream of this +1, the position -1 will be there. So, there is no position 0 as when we study. So, then if you keep on going upstream to this +1, then there is a position which is called as -10. So, how does a bacterial promoter look like? The most common sigma 70 promoters look like this, that they are bipartite, they have two regions. One is a -10 region and another is a -35, the location on the DNA strands. There are approximately 6 base pairs in -10, and -10 is basically the center of this 6 base pair, and -35 position is the center of this 6 base pair, and there is a difference of around 17 to 19 base pairs in between. So, that is how a typical bacterial promoter looks like. And if you see the sequence, that these are the structural features, that it will be located at the -10 position, and then there will be this particular sequence at the -30. If you look at the sequences and if you compare the sequences of a number of bacterial, a number of prokaryotic promoters, then there comes what is called as a consensus sequence. So, a sequence which is which defines that at this position this particular nucleotide will be present. So, a consensus sequence is given for the -10 position and the -35 position, which is found in most of the prokaryotic bacteria, but there are variations, and a stronger promoter is said to be when it is closer to this particular sequence which is there. So, more nucleotides match this consensus sequence, it is said to be a stronger promoter. And what do you mean by stronger promoter? That it can make full transcripts in a particular time. So, more full transcripts in a particular time, it is a stronger promoter, and if lesser amount of transcripts it can make in a, then it is a weaker promoter. So, the stronger and weaker promoter, they also correlate with the sequence of the promoter, that if they apply, they generally have a sequence which is correlating with the consensus. Nearer the sequence, stronger the promoter is. These are some of the variations in the promoters which you can find. In some of the promoters, prokaryotic promoters, there is an UP element also present, which is the upstream promoter element, which is present beyond the -35 region. Then in some of the promoters, there is an extended -10 position. So, there is an extended -10 position which is there. So, there is a -10 sequence, but there will be a certain sequences which are extended towards the upstream side. Then in some of the promoters, there is another part which is called as the discriminator. So, the downstream sequences are also found, which are called as the discriminator sequences. So, if you can see, they are generally a variation of the -10, -35 look of the promoter only, but there might be different kind of promoters which can be present. The predominant, now we were talking about sigma factor, which is very, very important, and predominant sigma factor is sigma 70. So, there are a number of sigma factors which are present in prokaryotes. The primary one is called as the sigma 70 factor, and if you look at the structure of the sigma 70 factor, it is actually divided into 4 regions, which is 1, 2, 3 and 4, and different regions have different functions to perform in the process of transcription. So, when I said we will talk about the components of the RNA polymerase, it was basically that we will get to know that it's a subunit, it's a multi-unit structure. It contains that alpha unit, beta prime unit, omega and the sigma subunit, and then we will also know the functional component of these all subunits which are there, and the primary function is for this sigma 70 subunit. So now you can see that this is shown by this bar and the regions 1, 2, 3, 4, then their sub-regions are also mentioned as like region 1 has another 1 and 2 region, and then on the downside of it there is another, the functions are shown. So probably the region 1.1 is involved in the inhibition of DNA binding. We will just elaborate more subsequently that what does this understand. But then the region 2 is primarily the region 2 and 4 is the one which interacts with the core. Then the melting of DNA, the locally unwound, is facilitated by this region which is between 1 and 2 is there. Then the promoter recognition, which is a primary role of sigma factor, is basically at -10 and -35, which is located, which is primarily done by the region 2 and region 4 of the sigma subunit. So this explains the different functions of sigma subunit. So it aids in the interaction, the promoter recognition, and it aids in the melting of the DNA, which will subsequently lead to the conversion of closed promoter complex to open promoter complex. And then obviously because it is a part of a core, it has to interact with the core. And another activity which is had, which is the inhibition of DNA binding, which we will subsequently see that how does this happens. Now, we studied about this UP element. Some of the promoters have this upstream region and it does not interact with the sigma factor. However, the extension, the alpha subunit has an extension. The C-terminal domain of the alpha subunit interacts with this UP element and it also stabilizes this, or it also aids in the tight binding of this RNA polymerase onto the promoter region. So UP element actually aids in the stronger binding of the RNA polymerase to the promoter region, but it does not interact with the sigma factor. It interacts with the C-terminal domain of the alpha subunit of the RNA polymerase. There are, as I said, there are other alternate sigma factors which are present in the cells. So certain sigma factors for the E. coli are given. Now these sigma factors associate with the RNA polymerase enzyme, core enzyme, and then transcribe certain specific genes only. Most of the genes present in the cell, in the DNA, are transcribed by the sigma 70 based promoters only. But some of the specialized genes, such as the heat shock genes or certain flagellar genes, are transcribed by RNA polymerases which are associated with alternate sigma factors. For example, in E. coli you have sigma 54 or sigma 32 or sigma 28. These are the alternate sigma factors which are happen. So why I show this alternate sigma factors is because there is a kind of competency going on inside the cell for association with the core enzyme. So the point I wanted to make was that obviously sigma 70 genes are, sigma 70 promoter based genes are many in number, but then there is sigma 70 and there are alternate sigma factors also present. So there is at certain times, for example, when heat shock occurs, then there is a tendency for the overproduction of this sigma 32, and this sigma 32, which is also referred to as sigma S, then this sigma S competes with the sigma 70 for the core enzyme and has more tendency, because now it increases in concentration. So it binds with the core enzyme readily and transcribes the heat shock genes, which otherwise will not be transcribed at a higher level, because all the core enzyme is bound with the sigma 70 promoters, sigma 70 subunit, and therefore transcribing the genes from the sigma 70 promoters. So this is again a very important regulation which we will see, that even altering the sigma factor which is attaching with the RNA polymerase, the transcription of the genes can be regulated. So that is why I show. Then there is another B subtilis sporulation. So they are also Bacillus subtilis sigma factors are there, or in Phage T4 also they encode their own sigma factors which are entirely different. Then the consensus promoter regions are also shown, that what consensus what promoter regions do these particular sigma factors identify, with the gaps also given, that whatever is the gap between the -10 and the -35 regions which is there. So now this is how the initiation has occurred. So the RNA polymerase, the core enzyme, has got associated with the sigma factor, and now it sits on the promoter. It recognizes this -10 and -35 region. So the region 2 and 4 of the sigma factor is associating with the -10 and -35 region respectively, and then it is loading the RNA polymerase to the DNA strand. The next step will be the transition now of this closed promoter complex into the open promoter complex, and that involves the structural changes in the RNA polymerase and in the promoter DNA. This transition is often called as isomerization. So isomerization is the transformation of closed promoter complex into a open promoter complex which happen. And this does not require energy derived from ATP hydrolysis. We will see that this is a major difference between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic transcription, that only the structural changes which we are talking about in RNA polymerase or in the promoter DNA where this polymerase is bound, that structural changes are enough to locally unwound the DNA, to convert the double-stranded DNA into unwound. It does not need any ATP hydrolysis for this to occur. However, in eukaryotic transcription, it does need ATP hydrolysis for the closed promoter complex to be converted into the open promoter complex. And moreover, this process is irreversible. So as we were talking about abortive initiations, the closed promoter complex is a reversible phenomena. The promoter can combine onto the RNA, and then so RNA polymerase can sit onto the promoter, but it can dissociate from the promoter and give rise to this abortive transcripts or smaller transcripts and release these transcripts. But once this closed promoter complex has transformed into an open promoter complex, then generally this is an irreversible phenomena. Now if it has transformed into an open promoter complex, the RNA polymerase will transcribe the entire gene. It will not stop. We will see that there is pausing and stalling which occurs, but generally it will go ahead and transcribe the entire gene and release the RNA transcript which is there. Now to understand these structural changes, we must understand the structure of the RNA polymerase and how this DNA is, how this is sitting on the DNA and how this then closed promoter complex converts into RNA, into open promoter complex. There are 5 channels into the enzyme and we will talk about them. One is the NTP uptake channel. So you can see the structure of the RNA polymerase. RNA polymerase is basically a claw-shaped kind of a thing which is similar to the DNA polymerase again, and the pincers which are formed by the beta and beta prime subunits. So at the base of the pincers, the two claws which you can see is present the activity cleft center. So the entire activity will take place at the base of the beta pincer. And there is a channel which is not shown in this figure because it is lying on the other side. It is lying just behind on the back side of this RNA polymerase at the position where you can see there is a +1. So behind the activity cleft center, there is an NTP uptake channel. So from where the ribonucleotides will enter. So there is an NTP uptake channel. Then there is an RNA exit channel, which is the nascent transcript which is formed will exit RNA polymerase from this particular channel which is called as the RNA exit channel. Then there is a downstream DNA channel. The next 3 channels are basically associated with the DNA and will lead to this change, the structural change which we are talking about. So on the right hand side, if you can see, then that is the downstream DNA. And there is a channel from where this double-stranded downstream channel enters. So the double helix DNA from the downstream will enter the RNA polymerase, and when it will reach the activity center cleft, then the local unwounding will take place. And then local unwounding, the double strands, one of the strand will act as the template strand and the other strand will act as a non-template strand. So there are 2 channels for both of these. One is a non-template channel from where this orange shaped non-template channel will go, a non-template strand will go, and then there is another channel which is called as the template channel. So the double-stranded DNA will enter from the downstream DNA At the activity cleft center, there will be a transcription start site which is +1. So at this point, because of the structural changes, the pincer will tighten on the double-stranded molecule, and because of all these changes, the DNA will locally unwound. The unwinding takes place from approximately +3 to +11 nucleotides. So approximately 3 to 11 nucleotides are the ones which are locally unwound, and then the non-template strand will go from the non-template channel and finally meet the strand which is coming out from the template strand. So beyond +11, the rewinding will take place, and that will lead to what is called as the upstream DNA. So you can see that the downstream DNA and the upstream DNA are both double-stranded. So the part of DNA which is locally unwound is fixed, which is approximately +3 to +11 stage, and the +1 transcription site is there. The NTPs are coming from the NTP channel, and then this RNA polymerase will catalyze the addition of these NTPs one by one. Only one happens at one time, and therefore the length remains fixed because one will be added and one will be going out from the upstream DNA channel, and therefore it will be winding again. The nascent transcript which is formed is going out from the RNA exit channel. This molecule also shows, the RNA polymerase also shows the different regions of the beta subunit. So you can see the alpha 1.1 region is lying where there is a downstream DNA. Then there is an alpha 2 region which is basically lying at the point of the promoter. So alpha 2 and alpha 4 are the ones which are recognizing the -10 and -35. So it is given, it is shown in the figure that alpha 2 region is sitting somewhere at the -10 position, and alpha 4 region is sitting somewhere as the -35 position, and then there is an alpha 3, and then there are linkers. There is a linker which is alpha 3-4 linker, and we will talk about this region of alpha 1.1 also. So that is how the beta, the sigma subunit attaches to it, and that is the structural changes which occur, which leads to, or the DNA enters and exits from all these channels, and RNA exits from all these channels, and that is how the closed promoter complex will change. So two striking structural changes are occurring. One which I told you, when the RNA polymerase sits on the promoter, then the two pincers which are in front, formed by that beta and beta dash subunit at the front of the enzyme, they clamp down tightly on the downstream DNA. So double-stranded DNA, they clamp down tightly onto it. Another striking structural change which is occurring is that there is a major shift in the position of the amino terminal region of the sigma, which is region 1.1. So as I told you this, when we were looking at the different regions and their function, it has a inhibitory, DNA binding. It inhibits DNA binding. So the position of region 1.1 in the normal enzyme, when it is not bound to the DNA, is lying at a position where actually the DNA should have been bound. So when not bound to DNA region 1.1, the lies in the active center cleft. So it is blocking actually the active center cleft, and it is blocking the path that in the open complex is followed by the template DNA strand. So as I told you, the double-stranded DNA double helix is entering through the downstream DNA channel, and then it is splitting, it is opening up to form the template and the non-template strand. But this region 1.1 inhibits the binding because it is occupying the position of the template channel. So it is occupying the position which is the from where the template strand has to run. When this closed promoter complex region transforms into an open complex region, then this 1.1 region undergoes approximately 50 angstroms kind of a tilt. So it shifts 50 angstroms, and therefore it releases, it exposes the region which it was occupying in the enzyme. So it exposes the DNA template strand, and therefore now the DNA template strand can pass through that channel. So basically this region 1.1 is acting as a molecular mimic. So when it is not bound to DNA, then it is occupying the space, and therefore that gives the specificity that RNA polymerase is not binding everywhere. The 1.1 region is inhibiting the binding of DNA to this region. But once this promoter complex from closed to open occurs, that the stability occurs, that the transcription now has to occur, this 1.1 region leaves its place and the template strand can pass through that channel, and therefore the elongation can take place. So during this abortive initiations, this is not, it's not strong enough so that it can displace this thing, and therefore the enzyme dissociates, then gets back again, and once the enzyme starts elongating, then this sigma subunit basically dissociates from the RNA polymerase. So when not bound to DNA, the region 1.1 of the sigma subunit lies in the active center cleft, blocking the path that in the open complex is followed by the template DNA strand. In the open complex region, 1.1 shifts 50 angstrom and is now found on the outside of the enzyme, allowing the DNA to access the cleft. Thus, in the holoenzyme, region 1.1 act as a molecule mimic of DNA. In fact, when you look at the ionic composition, then this 1.1 region is very negative in nature, just like DNA. And the cavity where it is sitting, that activity cleft center, is very positive. All the amino acids are very positive in there. So that is how it can act as the DNA, and instead of DNA it is sitting, but when the open complex is formed, it is displaced, and now the DNA template strand can pass through and the transcription can occur. So the structural changes are basically leading to the formation of this open complex. Now, how this initial transcription occurs? The mechanism, basically there are three models which they talk about. One is that the transient exertions, because when we are talking about this abortive initiation, then they used to keep on producing the RNA transcript and then again go back to the promoter, again produce. So how does this occur? There are three models which are given. The first one is the forward reverse translocation, which is quite obvious that it will go 3 to 8 nucleotides up, but because this interaction is not very stable, then it will come back again, because the abortive, it will dissociate, it will come back again, or it will keep on sliding. It will not completely dissociate from the DNA, but RNA transcript will be released, and therefore the RNA transcription does not went beyond 10 base pairs, therefore it will come back to the promoter regions and then start again. So one of the model was that. Another model was that which is called as the inchworming, that the RNA polymerase has a flexible element which has the catalytic site. So a part of the RNA polymerase will keep sitting at the promoter, and the part which has the activity center will go on transcribing the DNA, but when this RNA transcription aborts, then that part will again come back. So the entire RNA polymerase does not move. One part just keeps sitting on the promoter, the other parts move in and then comes back. The third model, which is the accepted model and has the experimental evidences, is the scrunching model, that actually the RNA polymerase is fixed. What is moving is DNA. So this is called as the scrunching. The flexible element in the DNA is present. So what happens is, when it is sitting on the promoter, it is kind of taking back the DNA molecule. So it will take the DNA, it will scrunch the DNA molecule, and if the abortive RNA occurs, then it will again release it and start transcribing again. So up till approximately 10 to 12 base pairs, it can scrunch the DNA, and if and only if a open complex is formed, a proper open complex is formed, and the transcription has initiated properly and goes beyond 10 base pairs, that RNA polymerase starts to move. Otherwise, it just keeps sitting on the promoter and keeps crunching the DNA and then releasing the DNA, scrunching the DNA and releasing the DNA for this abortive initiations to occur. So as I said, that this third model has a lot of experimental evidences also, and therefore this is the most acceptable model, that how does the RNA polymerase initiates the transcription, just to start with. So now we go on to the next thing, that how does this promoter clearance occurs. Now the promoter, the transcription initiation has been established. The closed promoter complex has been converted into open promoter complex. Now as I said, that now the RNA polymerase has to move away from the promoter and keep on transcribing the entire gene, and the RNA chain will grow. So this involves breaking the polymerase promoter interaction and the polymerase core sigma interaction. So the role of sigma is basically, it's over now, because it has loaded the RNA polymerase onto the promoter, and now it has converted the closed promoter complexes to the open promoter complexes. So sigma will now break away from the core enzyme, and the core enzyme will leave the promoter, which is called as the promoter clearance, and will move on to the gene. So it involves all these interactions to be broken, and Another important factor in here is that the region 3-4, which we talked about, the 3-4 linker region. So the linker protein molecule segment between the region 3 and region 4 of the sigma is involved in these abortive initiations and subsequent promoter escape. And how does it do that is, if you look at this particular figure, on the top left hand panel there is a holoenzyme which is shown. So it is a different kind of a view which it is showing, and it is showing the beta dash and beta clamp which is there in the front, and the back side is the beta dash, and then the sigma subunit is attached. So in sigma subunit you have a alpha region which is 1.1 which is bound in the DBS, because this is just a holoenzyme, it is not yet bound to the double stranded DNA. So the initial region 1.1 is occupying the DNA binding region. So it is occupying the DNA binding space. Then there is an alpha 2 region, alpha 3 region and alpha 4, and then there is what is called as the alpha region 3.2 linker. This linker is basically occupying the RNA exit channel. So similar to the 1.1 region which is occupying the DNA binding channel, the DNA downstream binding channel, the alpha region 3.2, or which is a linker between the 3 and 4, is occupying the RNA exit channel. So when it gets bound to the DNA, now you can see the open complex is formed, and in the elongation complex you can see the position of the alpha region 3-4 linker and the position of the nascent RNA from where it is exiting is actually overlapping. So now this alpha 3-4 linker region acts as the mimic molecule. So the elongation can occur, the RNA transcript can exit the RNA channel, the open complex can lead to the elongation complex only if this 3/4 linker is displaced. Because 3/4 linker is displaced, RNA exit channel opens, and therefore the newer formed RNA transcript can come out of it. So this is again very important for the promoter clearance and escape, that this occurs when the open complex is formed and this particular linker is displaced, so that the nascent RNA transcript can be formed and the open complex now transform into what is called as an elongated complex. And this ends the initiation once the promoter clears the, once the RNA polymerase clears the promoter or escapes from it, that ends the initiation and then starts with the elongation. So after this alpha R 3/4 linkage is disrupted, because now the core promoter will dissociate, the sigma factor will dissociate with the core promoter, and now core promoter can sufficiently keep on adding the ribonucleotides and increasing the chain. So now we come to the transcription elongation. Now the elongation, as I again said, enzyme adds one nucleotide at a time to the growing RNA transcript. So the RNA the DNA RNA length, hybrid length remains constant. So one enters and the other goes from the RNA. So it just adds one nucleotide at a time. So the size of the transcription bubble, the locally unwound area, that is called as a transcription bubble. The length of the DNA, that is not double helical, always remains constant. So one is adding and one is going. At a temperature of about 37 degrees Celsius, the new nucleotides are added at an estimated rate of about 42 to 54 nucleotides per second in bacteria. But at one time only one is added, and then in 1 second approximately so many nucleotides can be added. Another important aspect in this is that it will keep on adding the polymerase, but the elongating polymerase proofreads the RNA. So you know that DNA proofreading is very important, because the DNA replication has to be very accurate. So the proofreading capacity is there. It has to remove any error that it has made, or any error nucleotide which has been added. So it has to keep on reading that whether whatever it is adding is correct or not. RNA polymerase to some extent also has this proofreading capacity, and there are two mechanisms for this. The first mechanism is the pyrophosphorylatic editing. It is a simple back reaction to catalyze the removal, the incorrect inserted ribonucleotides, and the process slows down. So basically when it reaches a mismatch, if a mismatch has occurred, the RNA polymerase spends some extra time there. So it keeps on hovering over the mismatch, and therefore it just does a reversal of the reaction which it do in the catalyzing the addition of the nucleotide. So all it does it, you know how a phosphodiester bond is formed. So removal of PPI, pyrophosphate is there, and the bond is formed between the 5' P and the 3' OH. So it will 3' OH and the 5' phosphate. So that is how a bond is formed. So all it will do is it will add the PPI, and because of the addition of the PPI, the mismatched base which has been added will be released, and therefore then at the next time it will incorporate the correct one. So this is what is called as the pyrophosphorylatic editing, but obviously it will slow down the transcription process. The second mechanism is what is called as the hydrolytic editing, and it involves backtracking of the polymerase of one or more nucleotides to cleave the RNA products. So elongating RNA polymerase will again, you know, spend some more time, but then it will backtrack the RNA, it will move one step behind, and then it will cleave, typically how the proofreading, it will cleave the wrongly incorporated RNA ribonucleotide, and then it will add on to the new product. So this is called as the hydrolytic editing. Hydrolytic editing is stimulated by the GRE factors. There are certain factors present inside the cells which act as the elongation stimulating factors, as well as they help in the cleaving of the RNA when the wrong nucleotide has been incorporated. Then there is another thing which happens, which I was talking about, is that at some times when the DNA is damaged, or there is some kind of a damage that has been occur in the DNA, then the elongating polymerases arrest. They do not move beyond that. So while transcribing, if the DNA damage occurs, then the polymerase is arrested at that position, and then they have to be removed. So what happens in case of bacteria is that there is a transcription coupled kind of a repair which happens. So if there is a RNA polymerase which is stalled or which is arrested at a particular position, then there is a removal of RNA polymerase that occurs. So I think the termination part we can continue in the next time, because my friend says that my time is up. So we can continue it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Definitely we'll like to take this topic up, and we'll continue with the further lecture. I don't have any, I have several questions, but I don't have the time. So students, if you have any questions, please do write into us, and I'll definitely ask my questions when ma'am comes next to our studios. We'll be continuing with this series, and we'll be doing termination of transcription as well. So please look at this video once it is uploaded on the YouTube channel. Do leave in your comments and your queries, and we'll take it up in the next lecture. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Charu.
Thank you.